I want to start today by asking you, the listener, a direct question. Like, really think about this for a second. When you hear the phrase, Nero fiddled while Rome burned, what is the immediate image that pops into your head?
Oh, it's such a universal visual, right?
Totally. I think for almost everyone, especially in Western culture, the visual is incredibly vivid.
Mm.
You picture this Roman emperor, right?
Yeah, usually draped in these extravagant purple robes,
Exactly. Standing on a balcony somewhere high up, probably on the Palatine Hill.
looking down at everything.
Right, looking down while the greatest city in the ancient world is just, well, turning into ash. I mean, you imagine the tightly packed streets of the Suburra turning into an absolute inferno.
Just massive destruction, people fleeing everywhere.
Yeah, the insulae, those ancient Roman apartment blocks just collapsing in on themselves. The sky is choked with this thick black smoke, and there is Nero.
Completely oblivious.
Oblivious, or like even worse, actively entertained by the whole thing.
Yeah, that's the real kicker of the image.
He's just standing there, maybe his eyes are closed, and he's playing this little wooden instrument, totally lost in his own music, while the literal foundation of his empire turns to charcoal. It's an incredibly powerful image.
It really is. I mean, it is the ultimate archetype of failed leadership.
Yeah.
The image survives because it serves as this perfect shorthand for a very specific type of elite detachment. Anyone who ignores a massive catastrophic crisis in favor of their own trivial pursuits.
Right, like we use it all the time.
Exactly. We use it to describe politicians, CEOs, institutional leaders. It's a narrative that has been taught, referenced, and just accepted as a historical given for nearly 2 millennia.
I mean, you literally learn it in grade school. You see it in editorial cartoons today, but here's the aha moment that absolutely floored me when we started digging into the sources for today's deep dive.
It's a big one.
That universally accepted historical fact, the one we all just take for granted, it is entirely fiction.
Completely made up.
Like completely, entirely wrong. In fact, it is a 1,900-year-old piece of highly calculated and weaponized political propaganda.
Yeah, the entire narrative, from the callous indifference to the specific instrument he was supposedly playing, it was all engineered by his political enemies.
Which is wild to think about.
It really stands as one of the most successful, enduring smear campaigns in human history.
And that's why today's deep dive is about so much more than just, setting an ancient historical record straight. We aren't just here to do a history lesson.
No, the implications are much bigger.
Right. We are taking a stack of sources, including accounts from classical antiquity and, remarkably, modern sociological observations of digital networks and professional online communities, to pull apart the actual mechanics of this myth.
Because the parallels are uncanny.
They really are. We're going to explore how the power dynamics of ancient Rome, specifically the mechanisms of who controls the narrative, perfectly mirror the way modern digital platforms are moderated, manipulated, and ultimately destroyed.
Yeah, we are basically tracing a direct line from the senatorial historians of the first century all the way to the algorithmic moderation we see today.
It's a fascinating connection.
We'll look at why highly technical professional communities are currently suffocating themselves by suppressing disruptive new information, particularly around things like artificial intelligence.
Yeah, that AI suppression is a huge part of this.
And we really want to provide you, the listener, with a framework for identifying when a digital ecosystem is collapsing around you and how you can actually navigate those failing networks.
Because honestly, whether you are navigating the lethal politics of ancient Rome or just trying to survive a completely toxic technical forum today, the human psychology of how we react to an uncontrollable fire is identical.
It really doesn't change. Humans are humans.
Exactly. So let's establish the reality of the situation first. Let's set the scene. The year is 64 AD. The Great Fire of Rome breaks out.
Right down in the merchant shops around the Circus Maximus.
Yeah, and this isn't some small brush fire either. Driven by these heavy summer winds, it burns for 6 days straight.
Which is an eternity in an ancient city.
And then it gets briefly contained, but then it reignites for another 3 days. It just completely devastates the capital. So if Nero isn't actually on a balcony playing a fiddle, what is the actual logistical reality of his whereabouts?
Well, when the fire first broke out, Nero wasn't even in Rome at all.
Wait, really?
Yeah, he was residing at his imperial villa in Antium, which is this coastal city.
Okay, so he's on the coast. Our sources put Antium at about 35 kilometers away from the capital.
Which doesn't sound like much today, but 35 kilometers in the first century is huge.
Right, no cars.
Even if you were utilizing the Cursus Perlicus, which was the state-run courier and transportation network, that is a significant geographical buffer. He was physically removed from the epicenter of the disaster when those first sparks caught.
I have to pause on that because from a modern perspective, physical absence is kind of the ultimate alibi.
Oh,
It's like accusing a systems architect of intentionally sabotaging the mainframe, only to look at the server logs and realize they were on a backcountry hiking trip without cell service when the catastrophic failure occurred.
right. You can't be actively doing the damage if you aren't even logged in.
Exactly. You cannot be charged with leisurely watching a crisis unfold if you are completely outside the radius of the event. But, I mean, an alibi only extends to the moment of discovery, right?
Yeah, once he knows, the clock starts ticking.
Right. Once the courier actually reaches Antium and tells the emperor that Rome is burning, his reaction basically dictates his legacy. So if we discard the whole fiddling myth, what do the sources actually say he did?
Well, the historical defense of Nero, and this is grounded in the accounts of those who actually witnessed the logistics of the event, points to an immediate, massive mobilization.
So he didn't just stay at the beach?
Not at all. He did not remain on the coast. He rushed back to Rome, arriving while the fire was literally still raging, and he organized an empire-level relief effort.
Wow, that's the exact opposite of what we're taught.
It is. He opened the Campus Martius, he opened the public buildings of Agrippa, and this is probably the most significant detail. He opened his own imperial gardens to shelter the newly homeless population.
Wait, so he essentially turned his private, highly secured royal estate into a refugee camp?
He did. He let the public in. And furthermore, he understood the secondary threat of a massive urban fire.
Which would be what? Disease?
Starvation. In ancient Rome, if you survive the actual flames, the next immediate danger is mass starvation.
Because all the food burns.
Exactly. The granaries and the supply chains have been entirely incinerated. So Nero actually utilized his own personal funds to bring emergency food supplies up from the port of Ostia.
That's a huge logistical undertaking.
And he artificially drastically reduced the price of corn to ensure the poorest citizens could actually afford to eat. I mean, he was deeply entrenched in active systemic crisis management.
So we have this historical reality of a leader engaged in massive logistical triage. He's housing people, he's feeding people, and yet the myth strips all of that away and replaces it with a guy playing a fiddle.
It's kind of tragic, really.
It is, and I want to highlight the fiddle specifically because our sources point out an anachronism here that is so glaring it is almost comical.
The fiddle is my favorite part of this whole lie.
Right, because the introduction of the fiddle into the myth is this fascinating study in technological anachronism.
The instrument we recognize as the fiddle, or the violin, relies on a very specific bowed string technology.
Which involves using a bow to create friction on the strings.
Right. And that technology simply did not exist in the Mediterranean world in 64 AD.
It wasn't even a thing.
No. Nero was known to play the lyre, which is a plucked string instrument kind of akin to a small harp.
It's an absurd historical glitch. It is the equivalent of a serious, peer-reviewed biography claiming that George Washington escaped the British across the Delaware River in a Black Hawk helicopter.
That's a perfect analogy.
And society just collectively nods and accepts it. Oh yeah, Washington and his chopper. You cannot fiddle if the technology of the fiddle is a millennium and a half away from being invented.
You really can't. But we have to look at the psychological weight of that specific anachronism. Why change it to a fiddle later on?
Right, why not just say he played the lyre while Rome burned?
Because a lyre is historically associated with Hellenistic poetry, with order, with mathematical precision in music.
It's very calm and structured.
Exactly. It does not convey the chaos the mythmakers wanted to project. The image of the fiddle. Think about the frantic, aggressive bowing motion tucked under the chin. It conveys a manic, almost mocking energy.
Oh, that makes so much sense. It's erratic.
It's chaotic. The people who propagated this myth later on required an instrument that visually represented madness, entirely regardless of historical accuracy.
Wow. So if the historical reality involves this massive coordinated relief effort, and the core visual of the myth relies on a physically impossible instrument, we really have to examine the source code of the smear.
We have to look at the authors.
Right. Who invented the Washington helicopter? Who held the monopoly on narrative creation in ancient Rome?
To understand the origin of the propaganda, we have to look at the authors of Roman history. We are talking about men like Tacitus, Suetonius, and Cassius Dio.
These are the big names you read in classics classes.
Right. But these were not objective journalists bound by modern ethical standards of reporting.
They weren't fact-checking.
No, they were aristocrats. They
Yeah.
belonged to the senatorial class.
And the power dynamic between the senatorial elite and the principate, which is basically the emperor, was fundamentally broken by the time Nero took power. Right.
Completely broken. The Roman Senate represented the old republic. They were the entrenched generational wealth of Rome.
The old money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Under the early emperors, their actual legislative power was continually being eroded, but, and this is crucial, their social prestige and their monopoly on writing the history remained completely intact.
So they still had the pens.
Yes. And Nero, in particular, bypassed the Senate entirely. He mocked their traditions and generally treated them as an obsolete nuisance. The animosity between them was profound.
So when these senators or their ideological successors a generation later sit down to write the actual annals of Nero's reign, they are not operating as historians.
Not at all.
They're operating as political assassins.
They possessed the ultimate weapon in the ancient world, which was the preservation of text.
If it's written down, it becomes the truth.
Exactly. If the senatorial class decided to codify you as a tyrant, they controlled the parchment. There was no alternative media apparatus for the plebeian class to, correct the record.
Right. There's no ancient Twitter where someone can post a video saying, actually, Nero is down here handing out bread.
There was no independent verification at all. Their grievances simply became the official memory of the state. They actively erased the relief efforts, the opening of the gardens, the subsidized grain.
They just deleted it from the server, essentially.
And they replaced it with a caricature of an insane tyrant playing a frantic tune.
It is a terrifying testament to the power of controlling the historical record. But, if we fast forward to today, we have archaeological evidence.
We do.
We have modern historians who have completely dismantled the biases of Tacitus and Suetonius. The truth is available to anyone who wants to read it, yet the myth has completely outlived the debunking. Why does this specific narrative have such an unbreakable grip on our collective consciousness?
The myth persists because it actually transcends the historical figure of Nero himself.
How do you mean?
It survives because it tells a profound emotional truth about how human beings experience the collapse of complex systems.
Okay, unpack the mechanics of that emotional truth for me.
People do not retain the Nero myth because they are super passionate about first-century Roman logistics.
Right. Nobody cares about the grain supply chains.
Exactly. They retain it because the archetype of the oblivious leader is a universal sociological experience. Consider any major systemic failure in your own life.
Like a corporation going bankrupt.
Yes. Or a municipal government failing to address a localized disaster, or a social institution fracturing. The people at the bottom of that hierarchy experience visceral, very real panic.
Because they're the ones getting burned.
Right. They are watching their livelihoods, their stability, the metaphorical fire destroying their environment. But when they look upward at the apex of the hierarchy, what do they perceive?
They usually see a leadership class that seems completely insulated from the heat.
Exactly. The leaders appear to be engaging in trivialities. They're focusing on public relations, debating minor procedural rules, or playing bureaucratic games while the system burns around them.
Playing their own little fiddles.
Yes. The historical Nero might have been a confident crisis manager, but the mythological Nero perfectly encapsulates the rage of the powerless watching the powerful ignore reality.
That makes total sense. We keep the myth alive because we need a linguistic shorthand to describe the trauma of institutional neglect.
It's an emotional release valve.
And that monopoly on the narrative, the one the Roman Senate had, that didn't die with ancient Rome.
Oh no, it just changed forms.
It just migrated into the architecture of our digital platforms. If the Nero myth is fundamentally about people suppressing uncomfortable truths and ignoring reality while a system collapses, where are the fiddlers operating today?
This brings us to the modern sources we reviewed.
Right. Our sources pull us into this contemporary observation regarding the slow death of professional, technical online communities.
We are shifting our focus here from the physical destruction of an ancient city to the algorithmic decay of a modern digital network.
The stakes feel different, but the psychology is exactly the same.
Absolutely. The source material outlines a highly specific phenomenon occurring right now within forums dedicated to technical professionals.
We're talking about software engineers, systems administrators, right?
Yes, individuals whose entire careers are built on technological adaptation.
Imagine this digital space for a second. For years, it has operated as this vibrant hub, Professionals are sharing complex problem-solving tips. They're debugging syntax together, pushing their collective knowledge forward.
A very healthy ecosystem.
But recently, a trigger has been introduced into this ecosystem. The source notes that whenever a user posts content discussing artificial intelligence, the post triggers a rapid, silent, and highly predictable reaction.
It is almost instantaneous. Within minutes, the post is heavily downvoted to 0.
Just buried.
Yes. It is effectively hidden by the platform's sorting algorithm.
Let's dissect the UX here, the user experience of what is actually happening. This is not a scenario where a post about AI generates a massive, highly technical debate in the comment section.
Right. They aren't arguing about the merits of the code.
There is no rigorous intellectual teardown of the poster's premise. There is just a silent, coordinated algorithmic burial.
A digital assassination.
The source observes that a post might initially receive a few organic upvotes from users who are genuinely interested in the application of the new technology.
Because the tech is actually useful.
Right. But inevitably, this hostile faction arrives, applies mass downvotes, pushes the score to 0, and artificially holds it there.
To understand this behavior, we really have to examine the deep cognitive dissonance and the existential fear that is driving the technical workforce right now.
Because on the surface, it doesn't make sense. Why would a community of rational, highly educated professionals actively suppress information regarding the most significant technological leap in their field?
It seems counterintuitive, right?
Yeah, I would argue it goes against the very DNA of an engineer to hide from new tech. Engineers love tools, so what is the mechanism behind this fear?
The mechanism is a sudden, traumatic depreciation of human capital.
Oh, wow.
Think about it. For decades, these professionals derived their value, their income, and honestly, their identity from mastering highly complex, arcane syntaxes and frameworks.
Things that take years to learn.
Exactly. It took years of study to learn how to build certain digital architectures. But generative AI models are not abstract concepts anymore. They are actively outputting that exact same complex code in seconds.
It's doing their job.
The foundational bedrock of their professional reality is shifting beneath their feet, and they feel entirely powerless to stop the technology itself.
You can't just tell the AI to stop existing.
Right. You cannot debate an algorithm. You cannot downvote a neural network out of existence.
It is an uncontrollable fire.
Yes, the flames are already in the city.
And here is the twist that our sources illuminate, which is just brilliant. When you look at the users sitting in that forum, quietly clicking the downvote arrow to bury any mention of AI.
Those users are the modern-day fiddlers.
It blew my mind when I read that. It is a profound inversion of the ancient myth.
It really is. We are so conditioned to look for the oblivious leader standing up on the balcony.
We're looking for the guy in the purple robes.
But in a decentralized digital community, the collective user base is the leadership.
The crowd is the emperor.
By weaponizing that downvote button, these individuals are exercising the absolute last shred of agency they feel they possess.
It is pure illusion of control. Let's look at the friction, or the lack thereof, in that UI design. Clicking a downward arrow takes 0 cognitive load.
None at all.
It requires no defense. You don't have to articulate a counter-argument. You don't have to prove that AI is bad or that the code is faulty. You just have to hide the post.
And that lack of friction is exactly what weaponizes the behavior. They are not downvoting the post because the post is technically inaccurate.
Right.
They are strangling the messenger because the messenger is forcing them to confront the reality that their industry has permanently altered.
It's shooting the messenger, but digitally.
It is a psychological defense mechanism. Digital suppression is being used as a buffer against existential panic.
But this behavior, this silent suppression of disruptive realities, does not just harm the individual who took the time to post. Our sources argue that this exact mechanism is the anatomy of a collapsing digital empire.
It is how online communities die.
We have to identify the specific markers of platform decay here. How do you, as a participant in a digital network, recognize that your ecosystem is terminally ill?
Well, let's introduce a biological metaphor here because I think it fits better than just calling it a dying forum.
Okay, I like metaphors.
It acts like an autoimmune disease.
Oh, that's interesting.
Think about a healthy body or a healthy forum. It naturally has defense mechanisms. You downvote spam, you downvote completely toxic behavior.
That is the immune system working as intended.
Exactly. But a community enters a terminal decline when that immune system becomes hyperactive and starts destroying healthy, necessary cells.
In this case, the introduction of new, disruptive knowledge.
Right. The primary activity of the network shifts entirely from creation to suppression.
That shift is the critical inflection point. A thriving network operates on an expansive energy. Users are incentivized to build, to share, to risk posting a totally new idea.
Because they know they'll get constructive feedback.
Exactly. But a decaying network turns inward and becomes constrictive. The dominant user behavior is no longer adding value to the database, but rather policing the borders of the community to ensure nothing uncomfortable breaches the wall.
And we can actually quantify this. We can measure the health of these networks.
How do you measure it?
You look at the ratio of organic creation versus silent suppression.
Okay.
If a highly detailed, technically accurate post about integrating an AI workflow gets, say, 3 organic upvotes.
From people who actually read it.
Right, but then it is immediately met by 10 silent downvotes from users who simply resent the topic itself. The algorithmic health of that space is failing.
The signal-to-noise ratio is broken.
The sorting mechanism, which dictates what the entire community sees, has been hijacked by fear.
This requires us to look very closely at the sociology of the silent participant. The silent downvoter is the primary catalyst for the death of the network.
They're the ones holding the fiddle.
But hold on. Let me advocate for the listener here who might be thinking, wait, isn't community curation necessary? If a forum is dedicated strictly to legacy Java programming, shouldn't the users downvote a post about Python or AI? Isn't that just algorithmic hygiene to keep the forum on topic?
It's a fair question.
How do we differentiate healthy curation from this toxic suppression?
It is a vital distinction, and the source data provides a very clear dividing line.
Yeah.
Healthy curation is driven by active contributors who are trying to preserve the signal-to-noise ratio for the benefit of further creation.
I want the forum to stay useful.
Yes, but the toxic suppression we are observing is driven by an entirely different demographic. The source notes that these aggressive downvoters rarely, if ever, post original content themselves.
Ah, so they are consumers, not creators.
Exactly. They do not share breakthroughs. They do not write tutorials. They contribute zero positive value to the knowledge base of the ecosystem.
They just lurk and downvote.
Their entire interaction with the platform is predicated on enforcing a terrified silence. And mathematically speaking, a digital community cannot survive on a diet of friction alone.
You cannot build a network out of breaks. You need an engine.
That's a great way to put it.
If the engine is penalized every single time it turns over, the creators realize the game is rigged. I mean, think about it. If I am an engineer and I spend 2 hours writing a detailed breakdown of a new AI tool, and I know with absolute certainty that a silent faction is going to bury it to zero within 10 minutes, my behavioral response is simple.
You stop writing.
I just stop writing. Why would I waste my time?
And the inevitable result of that is capital flight.
Intellectual capital in this case.
Exactly. The innovators, the early adopters, the users who actually possess the adaptivity required to survive the technological shift, they abandon the platform.
They just pack up and leave. They drift away to a new Discord server, a new Substack, a new network where creation is actually still rewarded.
And who is left behind?
Just the gatekeepers. The original forum completely hollows out. The only active users remaining are the ones pushing the downvote button.
They have successfully defended their borders from the new technology, but the territory they are defending is now intellectually dead.
It's a wasteland. They're sitting in the ruins of their digital architecture, continuously hitting the downvote button, entirely insulated from the fact that the broader industry has already bypassed them.
They are playing the fiddle, all their forum bruns.
So if you are listening to this and you suddenly recognize these markers of autoimmune decay in your own professional Slack channel or your industry subreddit or your corporate communications platform, what is the protocol?
You need a survival strategy.
Right. Do you instantly abandon the network when you see the fiddlers taking over?
Not necessarily. The sources outline a framework for resilience. They provide 3 actionable strategies for operating within hostile digital spaces.
This is crucial.
Whether your goal is to try and revitalize the group or simply maintain your own professional sanity while the system collapses around you, these steps are key.
Okay, what is strategy number 1?
Strategy number 1, refuse to internalize the enforced silence.
Meaning, just keep posting.
Continue to post. The power of the hostile faction relies almost entirely on psychological intimidation.
Because downvotes feel bad.
They do. The downvote is designed to create a negative feedback loop that trains you to stop sharing. But as the source astutely points out, There is a hard mathematical limit to algorithmic suppression in these specific UI designs.
What's the limit?
They can downvote you to 0, but they cannot downvote you below 0.
Man, that is a phenomenal reframing of the user interface. The floor is 0.
It stops at 0.
Once a post hits 0, the hostile faction has essentially expended their ammunition. The suppression is maxed out, but the post has not been deleted.
It still exists in the database.
It is still searchable.
Which leads us directly to the second strategy, redefining the metric of value.
Okay, explain that one.
You must intellectually divorce the quality of your work from the immediate algorithmic response it gets.
That is so hard to do.
It is, but a net zero vote count on a platform experiencing systemic panic is not an objective measure of reality.
Right. It doesn't mean your post is bad.
It is simply a reflection of the crowd's cognitive dissonance. If the information you are providing is accurate, if it addresses the actual realities of the changing industry, the long-tail value of that post remains completely intact.
This is incredibly difficult for modern users to accept because we have been Pavlovian trained for over a decade by social media to equate upvotes with empirical truth.
We crave the validation.
But if you walk into a room of people who are absolutely terrified of the ocean and you try to teach them how to build a boat, you are going to get booed.
They're going to hate you for it.
But the negative reaction doesn't mean your boat design is flawed. It just means the audience isn't ready for the water.
Precisely. And that brings us to the third step, which is probably the most empowering psychological shift you can make.
Let's hear it.
Wear the 0 as an indicator of alignment with reality.
The badge of honor.
Yes. If you are operating in a network that is actively suffocating itself by denying the existence of AI or any other massive paradigm shift, a post sitting at 0 is proof that you are not participating in the collective delusion.
You are the sane one in the room.
Exactly. And if we expand this framework beyond just a single user in a forum, these principles represent the core traits of modern leadership required to prevent these institutional echo chambers from forming in the first place.
What does that kind of leadership actually look like in practice?
It looks like the historical Nero, not the mythological one.
The guy doing the crisis triage?
Yes. It requires a willingness to look directly at the fire, to openly acknowledge that the technological landscape is fundamentally shifting, rather than downvoting the data that proves it.
You have to face the heat.
And it demands the courage to force actual, rigorous debate, disabling the mechanics of silent suppression entirely.
So bringing things out into the open.
Right. If a team believes an AI integration is dangerous, compel them to articulate the technical reasons why.
Make them use their words, not just a downvote button.
Exactly, rather than allowing them to silently torpedo the project in the background. And finally, it requires the capacity to organize relief.
Meaning you actually adapt your workforce to the new reality.
You build the structures necessary to survive the change, rather than wasting energy pretending the old structures aren't already burning to the ground.
Which brings us to the final evolution of this whole metaphor. We began this deep dive by debunking the historical image of the emperor playing the fiddle.
The fake news of 64 AD.
Exactly. And we analyzed how the people suppressing the truth today, the silent downvoters, are the true modern fiddlers. But if you are the one trying to introduce reality into a decaying system, maybe we need to reclaim the instrument itself.
How do you mean?
Well, when the gatekeepers are panicking and the majority is attempting to enforce this terrified silence, sometimes you are required to keep playing the music.
But the objective is not to play a tune of distraction.
No. You must play the music of adaptation. You keep posting the data.
You keep sharing the workflow.
You keep building the boats. You do not play the music for the mob that is trying to drown you out. You play it for the quiet participants. The ones who haven't abandoned the platform yet. The ones who recognize the smoke and desperately want to understand the fire.
It is a radical shift in perspective.
Mm-hmm.
The Roman senatorial class designed the myth of Nero to condemn a man by accusing him of ignoring physical reality.
Right.
Today, we risk condemning our own professional futures when we use digital tools to ignore technological reality.
Let's synthesize the ground we've covered today because we went deep. We started in 64 AD, cutting through the smoke of the Subura to find a Roman emperor actively managing a crisis, only to have his entire legacy hijacked by a hostile aristocratic narrative monopoly.
The senators with the parchment.
And then we transitioned into the architecture of modern digital platforms, mapping out how the exact same human instinct, the fear of a changing world, drives professional communities to silently suppress disruptive technologies like AI.
And the overarching conclusion here is that Nero fiddled while Rome burned
Mhm.
transcends its historical inaccuracy.
It doesn't even matter that it's fake anymore.
No, because it is the ultimate diagnostic tool for institutional decay. It challenges every leader, every community manager, and every individual user to really examine whether they are addressing the flames of change or simply trying to silence the people pointing out the smoke.
Because history, whether it's carved into the marble of ancient Rome or coded into the sorting algorithms of a technical forum, is continually shaped by the tension between those who adapt and those who fear.
It's an eternal struggle.
1900 years ago, political enemies used ink and parchment to run a smear campaign that literally erased reality. Today, we fight the exact same battle over who controls the narrative. Only the weapon of choice is the frictionless downvote.
The technology evolves, but the human instinct to bury what terrifies us remains deeply encoded.
That is the ultimate value of understanding this parallel. When you encounter enforced silence in a digital space, you are no longer blind to the underlying mechanics.
You can see the matrix.
You can differentiate between organic community curation and the rigid, toxic suppression born of existential fear.
And with that analytical framework in place, we really want to leave you with a final provocative thought to carry with you as you log back into your digital life today.
I want you to analyze the networks you rely on every single day. Look at your corporate Slack, your professional subreddits, your industry forums. Pay attention to what gets celebrated, but more importantly, pay very close attention to what gets silently buried.
Look at who is doing the burying.
Yes. Look closely at the people in those virtual rooms. Are you surrounded by colleagues who are staring at the flames of a massive technological shift, actively sharing blueprints to build a fireproof future? Or are you trapped in a network of modern fiddlers, a community silently, desperately pushing buttons, eyes glued to the comfort of the past, hoping that if they just downvote the future enough, the fire will simply decide not to burn? Think about it. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.